Hi YouTube, welcome to Butterfly Alchemist. This is Lunaria, and today I want to share a perspective shift you can use to see the world differently, and it's something I think we don't even notice. I would say there are two modes of thinking that people operate under, and they may not even realize it. And this is often reflected in the creative arts, for example. There is outward resonance and there is inward resonance, and I'm going to explain what that means. So let's say I am describing a rose that is blooming in midnight. If I were focusing on inward resonance, I would be showing the experience of the rose existing and moving outward from that. So I would describe how the rose is feeling maybe weary if I was personifying it and looking for sunlight, and how it's still blooming towards the moon even with its struggles. That is inward resonance because it's focusing on the object of the rose and everything else circles around it. What is outward resonance then? Outward resonance is a perspective shift. It's when you focus on everything in relation to the rose instead of the rose in relation to everything else. So instead of describing the rose through the rose's eyes, I would describe how this rose blooming in midnight is a witness to midnight, that there is still bloom in trial. So instead of focusing on the rose, I focus on everything surrounding the rose. You could focus that way on rhythm and pattern and how something is actually weaved into a grander picture. That is outward resonance. We each have a system or perspective of thinking that we naturally operate from, and there's nothing wrong with that. So for example, my writer's voice and my singing voice and my natural mode of thinking is inward resonance. And why is that? Because I'm often caught in my own thoughts. So I tend to think inwardly on my experience or the experience of an object onto itself, instead of thinking outward resonance, which would be its connection and relationship to everything else. So what I would want you to do is try to shift your perspective to the opposite. If you're used to thinking about inward resonance or things internally in relationship to how everything else changes your internal experience, think outwardly. How do you shift the atmosphere around you? And vice versa, if you're someone who tends to think with outward resonance, where when you look at an object, you think of everything, how it's changed around it, focus on inward resonance. So that helps a lot with the creative arts, and ultimately, not just in the creative arts, in life, this gives you perspective. And what is balanced perspective? It's when you're able to operate with both inward and outward resonance and utilize both of those in your voice and how you communicate and how you deal with others and how you actually see the world. Because what this does is it changes your worldview. And these are things we don't even notice. I didn't even notice my voice was naturally inward resonance until recently, and I'm trying to expand from there. So what you can do, how can you learn to think like this? Well, not everyone is going to be writing passages for writing. I understand that. So there are ways to start noticing your natural way of thinking. Just take an object, a leaf, a rose, a dove, and ask yourself, do you tend to think of the object itself? Or do you tend to think of the night sky changed by the dove in flight? That would be outward resonance. So ask yourself, do you notice more the relationship between things? Or do you notice one thing onto itself? And that tells you your natural mode of thinking. One is more expansive, one is more reflective. And the thing is, we want to get to a place where we balance the two. So I hope this helps, and it's something that I find really interesting. And maybe in the future, I'll give examples of this. If anyone is interested, let me know. Thanks.